All right. So you know how everyone's always talking about planning your future together?
Right.
Well, we're diving deep into that today.
Okay.
I'm not talking about seating charts or anything like that.
Yeah.
We're talking about building a life,
Yeah.
your life
Mm-hmm.
as a couple.
Together. And it's really about going beyond that, that initial honeymoon phase.
Oh, yeah?
Where everything's new and exciting, which of course is important. But
Right.
for a relationship to really last, you need to kind of be heading in the same direction, even when,
Absolutely.
life throws those curveballs.
It always does, right.
Yeah.
And, we always talk about a happy marriage, a happy life together. But what does that actually look like?
Right.
Like day to day, 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
And that's why this roadmap you've provided, if you really unpack it,
Yeah.
it's about getting specific, like really specific questions like, do we both see ourselves building careers?
Mm.
Or is the dream to, I don't know, ditch the 9 to 5 at some point and do something totally different?
Right.
Kids, yes, no, how many? Saving for a house, early retirement.
Travel the world.
Yeah.
So if one person is picturing themselves as a CEO,
Yeah.
and the other one's like, you know what, I just want a cute little bookstore.
Right.
That requires a conversation.
Absolutely. And it's
Yeah.
not about, erasing individuality or anything like that.
Okay.
It's about finding where do those aspirations, overlap or at least complement each other.
So how do we do that? Because obviously we're not going to magically become the same person
Right.
with the same exact dreams.
Exactly. And the roadmap talks a lot about compromise,
Okay.
but not in the sense of one person sacrifices everything.
Right.
It's about finding creative solutions. So let's say,
Okay.
one partner really wants to open a bakery.
Okay. I love bakeries.
Right. Who doesn't? But maybe the other one's on this really fast track career path. So maybe a compromise looks like, weekends are for supporting the bakery dream.
Mm.
Or, okay, we're going to hit this career milestone and then we're looking at bakery ownership.
So it's less either or and more both and.
Exactly.
I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. But to even get to that point,
Mm.
you need to be able to talk about this stuff, right?
100%. The roadmap really emphasizes this whole idea of open and honest communication.
Well, yeah. But that's so much easier said than done.
It is.
Because these conversations can be kind of intimidating.
Right. Especially you're just diving into this. You haven't done a lot of long-term planning.
Right. Exactly. So where do you even begin?
Well, the roadmap has this really interesting approach. It talks about role-playing scenarios.
Yeah.
So think of it as a low-stakes practice run
Okay.
for talking about those potentially tricky topics.
So careers.
Careers, kids,
Wow.
money, big one. All those things.
Before it's a real life thing.
Before it blows up, exactly.
I like that. It's like a dress rehearsal.
Exactly. And it lets you kind of put it out there,
Yeah.
those hopes, those fears, without feeling like you're making this huge, life-altering decision.
So we've talked about communication, which is obviously key.
Huge.
But what happens when, even with the best intentions,
Right.
you realize you don't really want the same things 5, 10 years down the line?
That's where I think, setting those concrete shared goals, that becomes super important.
Okay.
And the roadmap talks about SMART goals.
I love a good SMART goal.
Right. So we're talking specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Yes. Because it's not just this vague idea floating around. It's
Mhm.
okay, what are the steps we're actually taking?
And to add to that,
Yeah.
the roadmap talks about setting a timeline. And I think that's really interesting because it's this framework, right, to kind of check in on your progress, celebrate those milestones, and even make adjustments as needed.
Which is important because life rarely goes according to plan.
Remember, it's not about rigidly sticking to this timeline. It's about having something to work from and knowing that things change.
Okay, so we've covered goals. We've talked about communication, even a little role playing.
Mm.
But there's this one topic that can make or break even the strongest relationships.
Oh, tell me.
And this roadmap really stresses it. Money.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It's huge. Because let's be honest,
Yeah.
sometimes those financial conversations could be way more stressful than planning an actual wedding.
100%.
So how do we approach it? How do we deal with the whole money thing?
Well, the roadmap really stresses this whole idea of budgeting as a team.
Okay.
And it's not about micromanaging every penny.
Right.
It's about being on the same page.
Okay.
When it comes to your shared expenses, your financial goals, even those individual dreams that have some kind of financial implication.
So like transparency,
Yeah.
trust, big time.
But even when we try to do all that, life
What's
happens,
that? Always.
curveballs come up, things we don't expect. How do we prepare for that?
I think it's just acknowledging that expecting the unexpected is, it's part of the deal.
Okay.
It's not about sticking to a rigid timeline, but being willing to adapt and revise as life unfolds.
So being flexible, being adaptable,
Absolutely.
just as important as those concrete goals.
100%.
Mhm.
And it's a dance, right?
Ah.
It's finding that balance.
Yeah.
But it's a dance worth mastering
Yeah.
because it's in those moments that you discover hidden strengths, both as individuals and as a couple.
I love that. Okay, so we talk about support. I know the roadmap talks about, involving friends and family.
Right.
Not in like a meddling way, but,
Right.
for that backup.
100%. I mean, having a strong support system, family, friends, even a therapist.
Yeah. That can be so helpful because they can give you perspective, they can give you advice, and sometimes you just need that safe space.
Oh, absolutely. To vent, to process.
Exactly. Sometimes just having someone listen can make all the difference.
So as we start to wrap up this part of our deep dive here,
Yeah.
what would you say is like the biggest takeaway from all of this?
This roadmap, it's great. It's a starting point.
Okay.
But the real journey happens in those ongoing conversations.
Yeah.
The shared growth, the willingness to adapt, to evolve together.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
We'll be back in a minute to talk more about building your future together. All right, so we're back.
Back at it.
Ready to like really dig into this whole roadmap thing.
Yeah. And what really struck me, like one of the big themes
Yeah.
is this idea of like, it's the journey, not the destination.
Oh, yeah.
Like that old saying.
Okay.
But it's true. And I think in this case, it's really about like savoring each step
Yeah.
you take together as a couple.
Totally. So it's
Yeah.
not just about like eventually buying the house or getting that promotion.
Right.
It's like, how do we celebrate those little wins
The little wins.
along the way?
Exactly. Like, yeah, you land that big promotion, pop the champagne.
Yeah.
But what about, like, you finally mastered that recipe you've been working on together?
Why
Like,
not?
high five, Those little moments
Totally.
that are specific to your relationship.
Yes. And I think honestly, that's so key because like
Yeah.
relationships are hard.
They are.
It's like you're going to have your ups and downs.
Totally.
So if you can take those moments
Mhm.
to like celebrate those little wins,
Keep the momentum going.
it makes all the difference.
Exactly. Like, you're making deposits into that, like, emotional bank account.
Okay, I like that.
Right. And speaking of, like, shared rituals and things,
Yeah.
the roadmap also talks about, like, traditions.
Traditions. Like maybe you have that favorite restaurant you go to every year for your anniversary.
Or it could be even simpler than that, like Sunday morning pancakes.
Okay.
Every Sunday, you make pancakes. Or Friday night board games, whatever it is.
I love that.
It's just about those things that become uniquely yours.
Those like touch points
Yes.
throughout your life together.
Exactly. And as life changes,
Yeah.
those traditions can evolve too.
Oh, totally.
Like, what was meaningful to you in your 20s might be totally different
Oh, for sure.
10 years later. It's like adding chapters to your story.
I love that. Okay, so we've talked about, the goals, the communication,
Mm-hmm.
navigating those differences,
Yeah.
celebrating along the way. But I think, even with all this, planning the future,
Right.
it can still feel kind of daunting.
Oh, 100%. And that's why I think throughout all of this material,
Yeah.
there's this recurring thing about self-compassion.
Okay.
Like, it's not about getting it right.
Okay.
It's about approaching it with, like, curiosity, a willingness to learn together,
Yeah.
and a whole lot of grace.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, you will make mistakes along the way. You will encounter the unexpected.
Because if you want to make God laugh,
Right.
tell him your plans.
Show them your plans, exactly. But you know what?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's those unexpected things
Yeah.
that turn out to be, like, the best adventures.
Absolutely. And I think that's the point. Like, it's not about, having this rigid itinerary. It's about,
Right.
okay, we have a shared sense of direction.
I like that. It's like a compass
Yes,
instead of, like, turn left, turn right,
exactly. And even if you, veer off the path a little bit, which you will.
which you will. Life happens.
Exactly. But as long as you're checking in with each other,
Yeah.
being honest about how you're feeling, reassessing those goals and dreams.
So, like, those regular maintenance checks you do on, like, a car to
Totally.
make sure everything is running smoothly.
100%. And just like a car needs fuel, you know? Relationships need those regular infusions.
Of connection and intimacy and just like shared experience.
And I don't just mean like squeezing in a date night
Right.
between work and errands and all that, although those are good too.
Of course, date nights are great, but I think it's also those little pockets of time throughout the day
Okay.
where you're really present with each other.
Yeah.
Like, put the phones down at dinner.
Yeah.
Actually listen when you ask, how was your day?
Okay.
Maybe even, have a spontaneous dance party in the kitchen.
Well, I'm always down for a spontaneous dance party.
Right. It's those little things.
It's being intentional.
Yes.
It's about like constantly reminding each other
Yeah.
that, hey, I choose you.
I choose us.
I choose us every single day. And you know what I think is so cool about all of this?
What's that?
It's like you're not just planning a future.
Yeah.
You're also like going on this personal journey
Oh, 100%.
of like growth,
For sure.
both like individually and as a couple.
It's like you discover strengths you didn't even know you had.
Oh, yeah.
You learn to navigate challenges in ways you never thought possible before.
And you might even inspire some people along the way.
That's right.
Speaking of inspiration, or maybe like a little bit of anxiety, depending on how you feel about it.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Should we talk about the old finances?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about it.
All right, we'll be right back to tackle that very important topic
The fun one.
after this quick break. All right, so we are back and ready to talk about,
The big one.
the big one, finances.
Everyone's favorite topic.
Right. Okay. But really, this roadmap, it's all about tackling those money conversations head on.
Totally. Because, let's be real, avoiding it is not going to make the student loan debt magically disappear.
It's not.
Right.
So how do we even start?
Well, I think it starts with, a mindset shift.
Okay.
It's not about keeping score,
Right.
like who makes more, who spends more. It's about approaching your finances as a team.
Okay, I love that. Teamwork.
Teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work, especially when it comes to your bank account.
100%. So how do we do that? How do we practically become this financial dream team?
Well, the roadmap, it suggests these regular money dates.
Money dates, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which at first might sound kind of, I don't know,
Yeah.
clinical.
A little bit.
But really, it's just dedicated time to
Perfect.
check in on your goals,
Yeah.
air any concerns you have, dream together about what you want to achieve financially as a couple.
I like that a lot better than sitting down and be like, okay, you spent this much on takeout.
Right. It's not about that. It's about we're on the same team.
Okay.
We have a shared vision.
Yes. So speaking of shared vision,
Yeah.
a lot of times when we talk about building a future, it's like those big things, right?
Yeah.
The house, the car,
Yeah.
maybe even, that goat farm in Tuscany.
The goat farm. Who knows?
Right. But how do we actually make those things happen?
Well, I think, again, this roadmap stresses the importance of setting really clear, specific financial goals.
Okay.
So it's not enough to just say, oh, we want a house. It's like, okay, what kind of house?
Yeah.
Where? And by when?
So we're back to those SMART goals.
SMART goals, they always come back.
They're important.
Because, let's be honest, it can feel really overwhelming if you're like, oh, I need to save, down payment.
Yeah.
But if you break it down into, okay, maybe we just save $100 extra this month,
Okay.
that feels a lot more doable.
Right. Totally. And it feels empowering too.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, we're not buying the yacht this year, but
We're $100 closer.
we're $100 closer to that trip to Bali.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're taking those small steps.
Yeah.
But we were talking about this before. Life, it rarely goes according to plan.
Rarely, if ever.
Right. So how do we prepare for that financially?
That's where that word comes back in, adaptability.
Hmm.
Right. Just because you have this budget, this
Right.
financial plan,
It's not set in stone.
it's not set in stone.
Right.
Life happens, you lose your job, unexpected medical expense.
Or even something amazing happens.
Totally. Maybe you get this amazing opportunity that requires a little bit of investment up front.
You got to be ready for it.
Exactly. So I think it's about approaching it with a sense of
Okay.
flexibility,
Mhm.
resilience, and honestly, a little bit of humor goes a long way.
Oh, definitely.
Right. Because sometimes you just got to laugh about it.
When else are you going to laugh, right? Okay, so I love that. So it's about communication. It's about being open,
Being a team,
being a team, and being ready for anything.
that's it.
Amazing. Well, this has been fantastic.
Yeah, it has.
Talking about building a life together.
It's exciting stuff.
It really is.
Yeah.
And remember, it's not about having all the answers. It's just about being willing to figure it out together.
100%.
Amazing. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. And remember, The real journey, it starts now. So grab your partner, dust off that roadmap, and start building that incredible future together.